A lot of agents are very reluctant to go on social media. From everything from they're uncomfortable with recording it, figuring out what to say. And then I honestly feel like there's like a little bit of imposter syndrome in there, right? Like, why should I talk about me? Nobody wants to hear about me, which is, I even feel that way. So today's guest, Michelle Knight, she's a brand strategist and the founder of BrandMerry, and she's helped over 1,000 entrepreneurs stop hiding behind their business card and start building brands people actually connect with. I have camera training and I've been in a ton of movies, but I was still reluctant to talk about myself. And if you're trying to figure out how to start, or maybe you've already started, but you aren't getting the views and traction you want, this episode is going to hit close to home. So I'm Susana Gibb. This is the Long Game Insurance Podcast, and we're going to get into it. So Michelle, I want to start somewhere a lot of people would bury because I love this part of your story. So you spent 8 months building your brand completely wrong. No clients, a beautiful website nobody saw. Walk me back to that moment. What was actually happening?
Yeah, so I had just had a baby. So like fresh, I was like a month postpartum, first baby, first time ever doing this, the whole shebang. I did not know what was happening. And I had this like very deep desire to not go back to my job. I worked in communications, PR, marketing for a large nonprofit. And I just started exploring the internet, I was like, what are people doing? People have their own businesses. I think it was someone from college who had like talked about business coaching. And I was like, this is so interesting. So I kind of just dove in head first, went through my very first program that was supposed to help me set up my business and get my first paying clients. And mind you, this was 2016, everyone. So there weren't like thousands and thousands of people teaching these concepts like there are today. And so I went through the whole process. I built an entire business. My website was gorgeous. My husband helped me with it. And literally 1 week after I launched it, I was like, what is this? I was like, I couldn't figure out how to create content. I couldn't figure out how to say anything. I was like, wait, now I have to show up on social media. I had gone about the branding process completely backward and realized that I was basically building a brand based on what I saw other people doing and kind of taking it and interpreting it and making it my own, air quotes, when what I really should have been doing was going from the inside out and building my brand. So I basically spent 2 days, I scrapped everything. I redid my entire website in 2 days with like travel photos, I rewrote all the copy. And I just started like going live and just like talking about the things that I ultimately wanted to talk about. And I signed a client within like a week. It was absolutely insane. I was like, okay, there's something here. And so I continued to really hone in on the personal branding side of things from that point on.
I love that you lead with that story and, even on your website, like you don't hide it. It's right there in big print. Because I think there's a lot of agents listening right now who are kind of in that moment. They've got the license, they've got the business cards, maybe even a website. And I'll tell you, like, I just launched the new version of my website, but I don't know what to say about it, right? Like what were you doing so wrong that so many people are still doing today?
I think the issue was because I didn't start from like I always say authentic, which I know is such a buzzword today, but like, because I didn't start from such an authentic place, I could like write copy for a website. That was easy. I could communicate, what I needed on my homepage and my About Me page, but I couldn't translate any of that into content. And content we're all content creators, whether you like it or not, like we are all content creators in today's day and age. And we need to get good at the process because this is how people ultimately discover us. And so there was this disconnect. And so I started to realize that like what I really needed to be focusing on was like the day-to-day activities to get in front of my ideal customer. My website was there. That was fantastic. But if I wasn't getting in front of new people, it was going to continue to sit there. So I started, when I went back to this branding process, which is now something that I teach, I started with like, who am I? What are the things that make me me that I love talking about? How do these things connect to my specific ideal customer, which has traditionally been a woman. And I just generally create a lot of mom content because that's my everyday life. And so I just started creating and telling stories in my emails on social media. And I started to notice that I was showing up every day with zero problem. Like there was no overthinking in the process. So like the very first step was just me showing up consistently. Then once I could say that foundation, I could start implementing frameworks. I could start elevating my videos. I could start being more strategic with, my CTAs. But the first obstacle was just me actually showing up. And in order to do that, I had to be talking about things that I gave, you know, part of my language, two shits about,
Right.
otherwise I wasn't
Yeah.
going to talk about it and I wasn't going to consistently show up.
So I think a lot of what you bring is really valuable. The challenge, I think, is a lot of agents don't think of themselves as a brand, right? Like
Mm,
we're selling Progressive or Safeco or Travelers, right? But the branding is for the coaches and the influencers, and that insurance can kind of sell itself and it sells on price. But it feels like that thinking is probably pretty dangerous. Well, that's not going to
it's
get you
actually
anywhere.
it's actually outdated. And I think that's part of the problem is in today's day and age, the businesses, the brands, the consultants, the sales people, the real estate agents, that's a great market to take insight into. The ones that are doing well are the ones that have focused on building a personal brand. So we think about real estate agents, and that's pretty closely connected to kind of like the industry that you're in. The real estate agents that are absolutely exploding are creating TikTok videos, right?
Hmm.
They're showing setups, for open houses. They're obviously doing the real estate side of it, but they're also just showing like, I'm a mom, I'm a real estate agent. Like this is my day to day. We are in the rise of personal branding. It's been building for many years. I feel very fortunate that I latched onto it early on out of necessity,
Hmm.
but now it's a non-negotiable. Like you literally cannot have a business and hide. You have to be showing up. And what I tell my clients a lot, because I work with clients in lots of different industries, from like selling yarn to real
Hmm.
estate agents, like my
Yeah.
clients sell yarn, like at like fairs and stuff like that. And I don't only work with coaches. And I always tell them, like, hey, there's a lot of people doing what you do. There's a lot of people selling insurance. So what, besides price, right? Which they're all gonna be pretty close and
Hmm.
people are shopping around, they're gonna make the decision based on how someone makes them feel and the trust piece of it.
Okay. So I love that. I think that's all very good and very specific. And here's where I think a lot of us agents freeze. They hear, I'm going to tell my story on social media and immediately think, well, nobody cares about my life. I'm not that interesting. And then there's the like, how do I find the line of professionalism, right? Like, and which is a challenge, right? In finding your brand, your professional brand, which is versus your personal brand. But I have to think this resistance probably comes up with a lot of people, right?
Absolutely. And I found that it's when you are trying to separate the two. So you get to decide, what does professional look like for you, right? So I don't have what I would consider a very professional brand, right? My brand is very raw. My tone of voice is very friendly, but that's a brand decision that I made. I got to make that decision. I work with clients who come from a corporate world. They specifically work with people who are in corporate, right? Like career coaches. And they're like, I want to be able to tell my story, but my tone of voice needs to be this specific way. And I want to make sure, that I'm not just like blasting my kids on the internet. Like, I think these are all just like misconceptions. Like, I talk a lot about being a mom. I talk a lot to mothers. I talk about building a business. My son is not all over my social media,
Mm-mm.
So you get to make the decision. I think that's what's really powerful. But we unfortunately have been brainwashed in seeing "Get Ready with Me" videos and people who are just like constantly, just putting everything online. You don't have to do that. You can still tell stories and show up online without it being like your entire livelihood exists on the internet.
How do you answer the speaking of the get ready with me,
Yeah.
my kids love those videos, I think. I watched her do this makeup trick, mom, and but where's the line? It can't be a video diary, right? Like
Mhm.
how do you know like You can't go on and talk about, well, my husband and I got into this big fight or my messy divorce or like
Yeah.
where's the line?
That's a great question. And I always talk to my clients and I'm like, it's very important that you decide whether you're an influencer or you're a business owner because they are not the same. An influencer will sell someone any products or anything else. They're there for views, right? They can make money, brand deals. Someone who is running a business is either selling their intellectual property, something physical that they've created, or like in your case, like working for a company, and there's rules and regulations around that, obviously, as well. So that's an important distinction when we're first getting started. But how you separate it is because you have decided I am a business, you have an ideal customer.
Mm.
You are not speaking to everyone. You are speaking to someone in particular. And so that person does not care about your fight with your husband. It does not relate to what we're actually doing. And so when it comes to storytelling, and I call it strategic storytelling, right? Because again, we think of storytelling, we think of get ready with me videos, we think of people just ranting in their car. There's a reason why those methods work so well because they're raw and they feel like an invitation into your world. This is why Reese Witherspoon is absolutely just like taking the internet by storm because she keeps recording talking head type videos just in her car, and people are like, oh my gosh, like they work on a psychological level, but she's being very strategic with what she talks about. And so you always need to keep your ideal customer in mind. And I think we're going to talk about like a framework that I have, but that's really the
Yes.
first step is, okay, I've got this really good idea. All right. Like I got an idea the other day to talk about the overwhelming pressure of AI and like using all the cool new skills that everyone, is talking about. And before I even recorded a video about it, I was like, okay, how is this relevant to my audience? What are they struggling with? Because this is cool. I want to talk about this, but if I can't connect it back to my audience, it's not useful to my brand as a whole. And even, I think I have a post scheduled that talks about the weather and how I modify my entire schedule based on the weather. Because I was like, this is funny. I want to talk about this. But before I even wrote it, I asked myself, like, how is this relevant to my ideal customer? Why is this important to them? They really want control of their schedule. So that's like the easiest thing we can do when it comes to kind of like building our story banks or filtering these stories through. That keeps it really grounded in the business side of things and not a diary on the internet.
Okay,
I'm
so
not interested in that option.
I kind of want to deviate to the Reese Witherspoon, but I'm going to stay on topic.
Okay, we can do it.
I'm going to stay on topic, but I want to so bad. Anyway, because I think her brand is fascinating to me. Anyway, okay, I'm going to leave it alone, Susana. Don't do it. So let's talk about your 5S framework. Because I loved it. I think it's great. And when I was researching you, I started using it with other things. And a friend of mine sent me her podcast script this morning that she was going to look over. And I was like, it's boring. Send it back into Claude, give this 5S framework and see what comes up. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's so much better. So can you walk us through it? We're going to go like step by step, like we are babies and we've never thought about this story thing before. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you 2 examples too. I know we're talking a lot about social media and just like getting out there and consistently doing it. But the good thing about this framework is it can be used for like social media type of storytelling, but you can also incorporate it into long form. So I'm going to share like YouTube videos if that is something that you're interested in. We love YouTube podcasting, things like that. So
Love
I'll give
it.
you the full breakdown, but don't like click away if you're like, I'm not showing up on social media because we definitely have a modification.
Okay, perfect.
So the 5S framework is spark, setup, strain, shift, and significance. Okay.
Okay,
And I'm going to break all that down.
perfect.
So spark is really what everyone else refers to as a hook, but you'll find that I changed the names of things to make more exciting, to make things more exciting.
A spark
To
is more
differentiate
exciting
myself.
than a hook. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really to just capture their attention, right? So this can be the text on the screen if it's like a B-roll video or a talking head video like we keep mentioning where it's just you talking directly to camera. This could be an opening email. It could be the beginning of your YouTube intro, the first slide of a carousel. It's what ultimately
Right.
gets them to stop, right? Then the next part of this, when it comes to the storytelling framework, is the setup. Because with any great story, we have to set up the story. You're going to find, as I talk about storytelling, people are like, oh, it's third grade all over again. And I'm a homeschool mom, so it's kind of fun to like be like, wow, I just taught this in my live video today, and now we're talking about story arcs in, a writing class. But it really is just the base level of storytelling that we've modified for social media and marketing today. So the setup, because you need to let people know, where were you in the story? What was happening? You're starting to paint a picture. You're giving more details. You might use language like, I remember, or I was sitting at the kitchen counter and I had this thought. You could use a lot of numbers. So you could say something like, for 3 years, I thought, dot, dot, dot. What you're really wanting to do is pull on those sensory details, because this is what sparked their attention and this is what starts to captivate them and pull them into the story. So again, what you saw, what you felt, what you heard, numbers that were happening, times, places, those types of details help set up the story.
Okay.
And with any great story, we have tension. Like if you think about your favorite movie, if you think about your favorite TV show, any book you've ever read, there is some sort of strain. There's some sort of tension that needs to be resolved. This is what gets people to keep reading till the end of the story. And so this is when you're starting to present the problem, if you will. So if you're sharing a story about, a conflict that you're experiencing, like for 3 years, I was organizing my inbox in this way until one day I realized that it was costing me 5 hours every single week or something like that. You know what I mean? Because then immediately someone's like, well, then what did you do? Like you had this realization, you had this thought, you were making this mistake, you were feeling exhausted, you were feeling frustrated, right? And they want to know, well, why? What happened? Don't leave
What
us hanging, kind
happened?
of thing. Yeah, what
Yes.
happened? And a lot of my clients, like I said, it's like maybe it's something that wasn't working. Maybe you realized you wanted something different. Maybe you found a better way. Maybe you were frustrated by something. You were craving something different, right? I talk a lot about desire marketing over pain marketing. And so like
Ooh,
talking about
desire
things,
versus pain points. Everybody loves to talk about pain points. Solve the
it's,
pain points, but solve the desires
yeah.
works really well too, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think we just as a society are just like very burnt out by the pain points. Like we
Oh, pain
psychologically will
points.
respond to pain faster, because if someone asks you like, what do you want? A lot of people will immediately be like, well, I don't want this and I don't want this and I don't want this. So like it worked for a long time, but now people have just taken it way too far. So I tend to go more towards desire marketing,
I love that.
um, and just kind of shifting the script with that tone of voice. So you might use language that's like, the problem was, what I really wanted was to experience this. I was exhausted because of this. Again, you're creating tension. People want to know what ultimately happened. And that's where the shift comes. Now, in long form content, this is going to be the bulk of where you live.
So the strain, it really is like a lot of the story, right?
Actually, the shift is kind of the main point of
The
the
shift
story.
is the main point. Interesting. Okay.
So think about it as the build, right? So you've got the spark, you've got the setup, the strain is the building, and now we are at the kind of the climax of
Okay.
the story on like what ultimately happened. What
How
was the
you
turning
changed,
point?
right?
Mm-hmm.
What you
Exactly.
changed, how you
Mm-hmm.
grew, what you learned. No, is learned
Yeah,
yet?
the lessons. Yeah, yeah. So this
Lessons
is
are in the
all in.
shift, right? Okay.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this could be the mistakes that you were making and what you did instead. This could be the lessons that you learned, right? And again, we'll talk a little bit about long form content. Maybe you're creating like a video on like 5 things that I did to, uh, you know, protect my home from
Okay. Okay.
disaster, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What changed? What clicked? What's a realization or a decision that you made? And so this is where the turning point becomes very, very clear to your reader. And then they're now hooked, right? They are in it. They're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then we just very, very easily, just like in our little, you know, story arc that we all know so well, we talk about the significance. And this specifically is like, okay, but now we're turning it back onto our ideal customer. It's my story. I was talking about the lessons that I learned that were relatable to my audience, right? It was a similar problem that we have experienced or something that a client, right? I tell my clients too, it doesn't have to be you. It could be someone you worked with. It could be their story that you're just telling from your perspective. The significance is, why does it matter to them? So now what do you want them to do with this story?
Okay.
Do you want them to book a call with you? Do you want them to comment something that they've done? Do you want them to go watch a YouTube video? What is the significance? What do you want them to do? A lot of my clients are going to be like, okay, now go, buy this product.
Right.
or comment S word, below, and I'll send you a free gift, right? Especially in your industry, a lot of lead gen is massive. And so having a way to just constantly be generating leads, and this is where you would ultimately make that ask as it relates to the story.
Okay. So I'm going to do this real basic, and you help me, because I get stuck between, I think, in the last S's. So this is super basic. So I'm going to use this one because it's an easy one. Once upon a time, I had Michelle Knight on my podcast because I was really feeling very challenged about telling my stories and reaching my audience. Do I need more strain? Maybe one more strain?
Are you doing a strain now, or are you starting with the beginning of the spark? Because I'd start it different.
Okay, you do it. You show me.
I would start yours different. I would start with the like, what's the goal of this? How are you feeling? You said, I have Michelle Knight on my podcast because.
Oh, because I want to be able to tell better stories and relate to my clients.
Yeah. So I would actually start it where it's like, how I learned to tell better stories and relate to my clients.
Okay.
Or
so that's
starting.
Would you put that on the
spark.
screen, or would you say it? The spark.
Either one.
Okay.
It depends on the type of content that you're ultimately creating. Like in my mind, I always think of carousels. I don't know. There's like the best one of the best storytelling types of content. And if you're scared to talk on video, they're great for storytelling, and you don't need to be like recording a bunch of content. So they're really great for swiping through. So I would start with something, because remember, the spark has to like get them to stop scrolling.
Right.
And so it needs to be something that's like relatable to them. I really struggled for 6 months to show up on social media, and then I interviewed this guest, right? And then the next piece would be the build, right? In what is it? Were we in March? In March, I sat down with Michelle Knight, brand strategist, and we talked about how to use storytelling to create a personal brand on social media.
Okay.
And then, this is kind of your setup. You gave me a date. We're sitting down. We're having an interview. I get it. You could put more details in there if you wanted to. I loved her background,
she had
whatever.
These cool plants in the background, right?
Cool plants. And so you're just like setting it up again, and then you're starting to have like the strain, and you could go about this a bunch of different ways. Very easily, you could just say, as Michelle was talking, I started to feel a little bit resistance about how do I actually show up on social media. And that's when she shared with me her 5S framework. And then your actual shift is the 5S framework, right? Which you could present, or you could put a clip of what I said, or like a golden nugget. And then we would say something along the lines of, I've been using this for, 2 months now, and I'm seeing a big change in how I'm showing up online. I know this is going to be beneficial to you as well. Comment episode 62 below, and I'll send you the link.
Fantastic. Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Very helpful. Okay. So I want to do another story if you can help me with this one. So, because I don't want to leave this one yet. So if I'm doing this as far as creating brand awareness for me, I need to figure out what questions I'm answering before I even start this whole thing, right? Like I wouldn't start the story just going, well, hi, I'm Susana and I'm an insurance agent and I've been an insurance agent for 15 years and you should just buy my auto from me because, right? Like, no, they haven't even done anything, right? So it's figure out the problem, to the answer to the problem before I even start this whole thing.
Okay. Exactly.
Okay.
And you know what? Back to that story, credibility is huge, right? Authority is huge. You saying that in the beginning is not what is wrong with the intro, but you could say something like, I've been selling insurance for 15 years, and this is the number one mistake that people make when they go to buy insurance. So you have
Okay.
your credibility about 15 years, right? And then you're saying that, like, and here's one little piece. The big thing that you want to remember when it comes to these types of stories is that they are micro. So they're very specific. You don't want to tell like your whole entire brand story. That
Mhm.
is, that can live on your About Me page, right? But
Okay.
these are very micro. What that's going to allow you to do is it's going to zoom in on one specific thing or one specific outcome or one specific problem. It's going to make your storytelling 10 times better. Because then you can paint a picture. You can talk about how you were feeling. You could talk about the emotions, right? You could say, I had a client that came to me and they did this and they were feeling frustrated and they were spending all of this money and I helped them find this solution and it was super easy. And I help my clients do this all the time. DM me if you're looking or something, you know what I mean? Have a better outro than that, but
Gotcha. So it's interesting because I feel like I may have set up this interview incorrectly because the brand portion and the 5S storytelling, while they're connected, are two kind of different pieces, aren't they?
yeah. So here's the way that I explain it to people because it's a buzzwordy thing that happens.
What, the
Okay.
brand
So
or the
we think
story
the
or
brand
both?
story,
The brand story.
right?
Okay. Okay.
I want you to think about your brand. So I actually think this is going to be really valuable to
Oh,
people.
good.
Your brand story is various chapters that have led you to where you are now. All right.
Okay.
So it might be covering, how you got into insurance, why you serve your specific market. Maybe there's something that happened to you. It's going to be longer, right? And you're going to think about your brand story. Some people call it the founder story or the origin story. That lives in very specific places on your website, right? Maybe in an intro to a podcast, a little condensed. Maybe it's on a free guide or a free gift. It's on, it essentially lives in very specific places. But then you have your digital stories. These are your micro stories. These are your content. Now you can
Mm-hmm.
take that longer brand story that you have beautifully crafted and you can cherry pick small pieces out of that where you might create one piece of content about a thing that happened to you at 18, right? Why you decided to get into insurance because of this thing that happened. The moment you decided to uh, start, I'm trying to think of something
Start your own
specific.
agency. Sure.
Exactly. Start your own agency, right? So those different pieces you could then, of course, translate into smaller digital stories. And that's where the framework comes into play because you're taking a very specific micro piece and you're wanting to tell it as a complete story leading to some sort of CTA. And these are the stories that my clients struggle with the most because you have to constantly be coming up with them. And that's why most people struggle with content as a whole, because they're like, I post every single day. Well, it's pulling from your experiences in everyday life. Your brand story is your brand story, and it's there, right? It's those chapters that
Mm-hmm.
unfolded. You can pull from it, but for only so long. You need to start pulling from your conversations that you're having, from different experiences, from thoughts that you have in the shower, from things you read, those types of things, client testimonials and turning them into great stories. And that is the sweet spot when it comes to business building online.
How often do you tell your people to post? Every
It
day?
depends. So if you're on social media, I really think that you need to be posting every single day. I encourage my clients to start with whatever feels consistent out of the gate. So if consistency is the most important thing, most people will start like every day. They won't have a system in place and then they don't post for like 6 months and that's not
Mm-hmm.
helpful, right? So I teach a lot of the systems because I really believe that if we want to post every day or we want to do YouTube every week, our system is what's going to support that process. And so to me, that's the most overlooked piece of the entire consistency framework.
Mm-hmm.
For social media, I really do think that it has to be every day, not just to make the algorithm happy, but to test what works, right? I think there's a business coach that I have been following and working with for years. She posts like 5 times a day. I can't do that. I'm not doing that. That's horrible. But she makes a point where she's like, yeah, I've had reels go absolutely viral because it's 1 out of every 30, you know? So I'm doing that in a week.
Oh,
You're doing that in a month.
that's a numbers game right there.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Which that actually makes a lot of sense because that's obviously what a lot of what we do in insurance sales is just numbers. The more people you talk to, the more people are going to close. So that makes sense. The more videos you do, the likelihood that one is going to do well, because it is kind of discouraging to do one a day and then they don't go anywhere. And then you think, well, what is the point of this? You know?
Yeah. I actually started my business and built my business primarily long form content. So SEO, YouTube, I was on Pinterest for years, still on it because it keeps working, luckily.
Interesting.
And I've been on social media the whole time, but not consistently. And it's really only been in the last 6 months that I've been prioritizing social media, as a way to get clients. It always was just a way for me to go deeper and move someone through the buying process after they discovered me. And so the consistency is like really important with that piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I also went through the same thing where I would post like a reel and I was like, gosh, this got like 200 views. What the fridge, you know? And then I asked myself, I'm like, 200 people saw my face probably for the first time, right? 200 people didn't know I existed. What would 200 people look like in a room if I was speaking on stage? And so a lot of that has been such a mindset shift. And my clients have been doing the same thing. And they're like, it's so different when you're looking
Yeah, you
at the
get
numbers
200
from that
people in a
perspective.
room. That's amazing. But
I
somehow
know.
200 views. I don't
Makes
even
us feel
25 people
like
in a
we didn't,
room.
and that I think is just the programming that happens online where it's like, if you're not going viral, you're not successful. But there's so many people who go viral that don't make any money in their business. And I know people who have 1,000 followers that are making consistent 10K months. So it's about the type of content that you share. And that's why storytelling is so essential.
I think one of the other really big obstacles, and I'm glad you brought up realtors earlier because, real estate agents they're sexy, right? They get to show these houses and they get to like dress up when they're going through and like, look at this amazing fireplace, right? And I personally joke, because I'm like, well, you're constantly chasing your client and I'm building residual income, but it's a lot harder for me to go, look at this fancy collision deductible. It is amazing, So it's like, how do you make insurance interesting?
I don't know. That would be kind of fun, actually, if you just started like playing a role in a character where you're like, let me tell you, come sit by the fire and let me tell you about deductibles. You know what I mean? Like that would be actually really hilarious. Maybe you're onto something here. You should get all fancy and dressed up with like a martini in your hand. It would
think they would stay for like 7 seconds and then I would start to explain it and they'd be like, and swipe and done,
Well, I think the big part of this is, and I've been talking about this a lot. I think I literally just made a post today on my social media about it, and that's the customer buying journey. And a lot of people don't understand the customer buying journey. We're not taught it when we learn marketing, which is a shame. But like, not everyone that discovers you is going to be ready to buy from you. And so you also have to think about your ideal customer when they're coming and finding you online. Where are they at? Are they actively looking for insurance?
No,
And they're
not
going to be
yet.
at a stage 3 or 4. So then if they're in the beginning stages and they're not yet, then they're experiencing some sort of symptom, right? They're either like getting ready to buy a house, they don't understand it. Like maybe you need like a whole educational series on like, this is what you need to know about insurance, but obviously we need to make it fun. Not fun, like it doesn't have to be like crazy entertaining, like you can talk to the camera, but we need to be using language that the average person is going to understand. They often say that the best marketing is done at a 5th grade level.
Interesting.
Just across the board. And so there's actually tools where you can type in like scripts or titles and it will tell you at like what level, like are you speaking at a college level or like a 5th grade level, and will actually help you like rewrite it. You can use AI for it too, which is very interesting. But like if you're attracting people who aren't actively looking for insurance, they're looking for education, most likely. Or they're not even thinking about it, and you need to get them thinking about it. And that's the
Mm.
type of content and stories that you want to be like doing like 80% of your content around, and then mixing in, okay, now you know you need insurance, and here's how you can take action to do that. Or here's how I help the client do this. Or here's how we saved money on an insurance policy. Or they needed something for their 16-year-old son who was getting their first car and they were feeling so overwhelmed, you know? And then having that like combination of those types of content, make sure that you're attracting people, you're meeting people where they are, and then you are moving them through the buying process with like in your brand sphere.
Okay. So I'm going to give you another one to help us create, if you
Okay.
don't mind. Okay. So, for example, and you may say that this is a terrible idea, but that's okay. So if
Okay.
I'm trying to talk about this coverage, it's called water seepage and leakage. It's a home insurance coverage. You probably never in your wildest
I
dreams thought you were
actually
going
do know about it.
to
So let's
you're going to
go.
talk about leakage today on how do you know about it?
Fun fact, I had my insurance license in my 20s, so
Shut up. Wow. I feel like you could do a whole like series giveaway for us insurance agents since you know it. So we'll get to that in a minute. But okay,
yeah.
water seepage and leakage, right? So if I want to feature this as one of my videos, right? I'm just going to highlight it so I can, like you say, get in front of my client base and present myself as somebody who knows what they're talking about, that they're going to make sure that that they're protected in the right way for this coverage that maybe they're like, "Oh my God, I don't know what that is. Do I have it now?" Right?
hmm
So,
hmm
can you give me I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
That's okay.
like an idea for how somebody might do it?
So the first thought, I was actually really quickly looking at some notes I wrote down this morning because I think it might be really helpful for this perspective. But the first thing that I would do is if you had a a story of someone who didn't have this and needed it,
I have one.
I would absolutely be telling that story.
Okay. So can I tell you the story and then you tell me how to fix
Yeah.
it? Okay.
hmm
So the basic gist is they had a water filtration system behind the sink, and it drip,
hmm
drip, slow, slow, drip, drip, dripped behind, down the cabinets, under the custom hardwoods, throughout most of the floor of the custom hardwoods, and then up into the cabinets. And they were so custom that they couldn't just replace part of the wood. They had to literally rip out the whole kitchen.
hmm Okay, so I would probably start with what's going to be like the most shocking, and this kind of goes back to I'm going to come back to these like five different
Yeah, please.
position things, but I would start with like either their name, or you could even say I had a customer who had to rip out their entire custom kitchen. Here's what
Oh,
happened.
okay. Oh,
And
okay.
then you're going to go into the process, right? Then you're going to go into the story time. You're going to set it up. You're going to say, my clients had a custom kitchen. Maybe if you have even a mock-up of a really expensive ass kitchen behind it, would be great.
Ooh,
Like a
I like
photo.
it. Yeah, because then people would look at it and be like, "That's
Uh-huh.
pretty. I love that kitchen."
Yeah. If you can describe, like you did a great job, like custom floors, we're talking custom cabinets, sizing, gorgeous, and a high level water filtration system. And without their knowledge, the water filtration system was dripping slowly until it reached a point where, and then you would talk a little bit about maybe how they found it, like they stepped on the floor, it was squishy, whatever, and every homeowner's worst nightmare. But it got worse. They didn't have this specific coverage in their
Mm,
plan, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
as a result of that, they had to, and then you could talk about maybe even how much it costs to redo the whole thing when this could have been a very simple, like, $50 add-on
Endorsement.
or
Yeah.
$10 add-on. Yeah.
Okay. It does feel it's interesting though because the spark, it feels like it's almost starting in the middle of the story. Oh, you're shaking your
It
head.
It can, yeah. It does depend, but like I think for social media especially, I tend to gravitate towards that because we have to stop someone from scrolling. Like think about if we're on a long form, let's think long form content, maybe like YouTube or podcasting, we're most likely following someone or we're typing into a search engine like I want to learn mistakes homeowners make or I want to learn how to find cheap insurance, right? We know what we're looking for. So then there's a baseline, like,
I had
YouTube
this one
thumbnails or
client, blah, blah.
titles. There can
I'm
be just
Susana
like
Gibb, and
three
I've been selling
mistakes.
insurance for 15 years, and I'd love to talk to you about water seepage and leakage, right? Boink. Nope, not doing it.
No,
Yeah.
you've got to pull them in. You've got to get them to literally stop scrolling. And so sometimes starting in the middle of a story creates so much tension, right? That, and again, this is like the first slide or you on video. It's like seconds. And then you're going in through to like the storytelling. So I don't think about the spark per se as like the storytelling. It literally is just getting them to stop scrolling.
And what did you say for your spark a second ago? I had a client who had to replace their whole kitchen. What did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
It feels
yes,
like
I'm
you're
like,
giving
here's what
away
happened.
it feels like you're giving away the end, but I guess no. The ending is, oh my God, how? What
How?
happened?
Like, why did they have to create like? And if you had like
Mm.
like $80,000 kitchen or something, like people,
Oh.
anyone who has a kitchen would literally be like, "Oh my gosh, tell me what happened." And we
I
all
don't
have
want that to
kitchens.
happen to me,
I
right?
don't want that to happen to me.
Interesting.
And so that kind of goes with like the fear piece of it, like the fear angle of it, or like I don't want this to happen to me. But you know, kind of back to the story, because like you could position the story in multiple times. Like you could tell the story a bunch of different ways. You know, you could even like with this specific is it a writer that or is it a special insurance?
What, the water
The
seepage and
water.
leakage? It's just
Yeah,
it's an endorsement that goes on the policy.
endorsement.
In most
Um
cases, yeah.
Yeah. You could even talk about, you could even say something like thinking of redoing your kitchen.
Mm,
Stop, you need this first. And then you
mm.
could kind of like talk into it. You know, you could set the scene. You could, I'm trying to think of like another way that you could even paint a fake picture. So this is like an imaginary picture where you're like, imagine waking up, stepping in your kitchen and feeling like slop, you know, or we keep using
Mm,
kitchen, but obviously this could be your bathroom. This could be anything.
right.
There's so many different angles that you can like go about sharing this one piece in a bunch of different ways.
So going back to my example of, hi, I'm Susana Gibb, and I've been selling insurance
Mm-hmm.
for 15 years, because you do see those in some of the stories too, where they say, let's go back to your initial spark of like, if I had a client once who almost lost their whole kitchen. My name is Susana Gibb, and I've been an agent for 15 years, 28, 28, actually, that's how long I've been. But anyway,
Yeah, good for you.
and I've been an agent for 28 years. But that feels like it's going for like, that's an SEO thing, isn't it? Is it not? Like they're trying to let, because it interrupts the story.
Eh,
But I see
yeah.
people do it all the time. They start with the spark. Well, I guess that's part of the setup, isn't it? This is the setup. This is who I am. This is how I'm going to solve this for you.
And I think it kind of depends on the content. Like I wouldn't necessarily do that in every single piece. You know what I mean?
True.
I think I would save it for more like video type of content, like if you're talking directly to the video. But like saying it in a way, I don't know, like you could do like if you said like I had a client, you know, who had to completely like redo their kitchen. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to you. By the way, I'm Susana Gibbs. I'm a insurance agent, 28 years experience. So I've seen some stuff, you know, and
Right.
this is just one of the things that I've seen. So if you could do it like a talking head, but like on a carousel, I would not interrupt the flow with like that. If they really want to know your credentials, they can click through to your bio.
So will you elaborate on the carousel, please?
Yeah, of course. So, you know, when it comes to Instagram, there are various formats that you can use. You've got your standalone one photo, right? With most of the storytelling happening in the caption.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have your talking directly to camera, like we're talking about Reese, you know, in her car.
Mm-hmm.
And the more casual this feels, the easier it is for someone to just like be intrigued to watch. Then you have, I call those talking head videos. Then you have like B-roll videos, which are going to be like kind of behind the scenes filming
I'm
where
just
like
casually cooking in my
I'm casual.
in my
Then I
kitchen.
set my camera up. Weird.
Magically. Yes, someone's capturing me, or I'm drinking coffee in a cafe.
Uh-huh. And think about those as like everyday relatable moments. Like that's a whole layer of storytelling that people just miss
Mm-hmm.
out. I had a friend one time that was like, "Why are people recording themselves uploading their dishwasher?" I said, "Because we all do it." And so it's relatable. What
Hmm.
they're putting on top of that, like the text on top of that or the voiceover might have absolutely nothing to do with that, but you just pulled someone with something relatable. It's like something that shocks the system or is relatable is usually what's going to get you to stop scrolling. And then we have the carousel post, which are essentially multiple slides of graphics that you can create in like Canva or in your Notes app and take screenshots.
Are they
And
videos or pictures?
it's to traditionally pictures.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can add videos or like movement. I am like base level when it comes to like my content. Like I go in Canva and I like copy and paste stuff over like a black background with like one photo of me and I'm like, here you go, here it is. You don't need to like spend all your time designing things. It's quite the waste of time. Um but I think but it's essentially, they're sliding through the carousels and they're going
Mm-hmm.
through, they're reading the story. And for posts like that and the talking head, you don't need a big caption, right? Because the content itself is the storytelling. So carousels, I think, are just really interesting because they've been doing traditionally really well. It was reels for a really long time, but now people are having incredible success with carousels over reels. And so they're a really good option for people who get hesitant about video content.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to show their face all of the time. They want to maybe be able to use stock photos or a solid color background. They're a writer, and that's a little bit easier for them. So those are the kind of the different variations. I like to go between all of them in my content in a week because it keeps it fresh for me. I don't have to sit down and record a bunch of videos because I don't have a ton of time for that. But I'm still showing up consistently creating content.
So in theory, we could take this water seepage and leakage story and make 6 different posts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In your processes that you teach people, do you normally tell them, go ahead and knock this story out and then just save it maybe to post like over the next 5 weeks, right? And then you're
Yeah.
consistently just building out your content further and further.
Yeah.
And
So
that may
I
be a
teach
whole other podcast on your processes.
well, I'll tell you what, I have a YouTube channel, which I'll, direct everyone to. It's just BrandMerry on YouTube. And I have an entire video on building a story bank. And so one of the habits that I encourage my clients get into is building out a story bank so they never have to wonder what they're going to be posting. So
Hmm.
baseline, you at least have a story bank and you wake up in the morning, you're like, let me go pick a story from this story bank. And I talk about how to kind of organize them in terms of pain point or desire story, or is it about a specific product? So this would be a great example. And so you always have that to rely on. That's kind of the base. And then if you really want to get into like a finer system, then yes, you would create, a post for that. And then you would duplicate that and have it repurposed in your calendar with the different angles.
Hmm.
And so I do a lot with AI. I'm actually teaching a workshop in April on how I've been showing up consistently on social media by having a weekly editorial calendar made using AI and like a conversation that I have every Sunday, and it maps out my entire week. It writes all my captions for me. It writes my scripts for my videos. So all I have to do is go record it, and it's all in my voice and it's all relevant to me and what I want to talk about. And so, there's tiers to this. So I always tell people like you got to start somewhere. So start at the
Mm-hmm.
base level,
Mm-hmm.
put your
Mm-hmm.
stories in a Google Doc or on your phone and post every day, right? It's your first obstacle. It's just consistent posting. Then fine tune the practice so that you could increase engagement, increase conversions, and maybe increase output, so you can do 2 times a day or something like that without actually spending more time.
How much time do you spend recording videos on a day or putting your
I
content
do
out?
not record every day. Yeah.
Oh,
So I have very specific content days. So like yesterday I recorded 4 YouTube videos in an hour and a half. So I keep my YouTube videos rather short. They're about 10 minutes.
okay.
I record them directly inside of Descript, and then I edit them inside of Descript all within the same day. So I have a whole month's worth of my YouTube content ready to go. And then I repurpose a lot of that content for social media, pulling out little nuggets. And then my So those live in like a document, right? So anytime I need a piece of content, I didn't record something, or I wanted to post twice today or whatever, I can go pull those at any time. But my weekly workflow is I actually going to record it right now. I've got 3 reels I need to record this week, and they'll take me about 15 minutes
Interesting.
because I already have the scripts written. Because I
Uh-huh.
do that work at the beginning of the week.
Uh-huh.
And then I use the teleprompter app inside of Edits, and it is the best.
The best. Wow.
The best.
Okay, that's a lot. That's so much good stuff. I can't even take it how much good stuff you just gave us. Okay. Where can people find you? And I will say, guys, her Instagram and social media stuff is real good. Like, I got a bunch of ideas just watching. I love that. What is it? Imitation is the best form of flattery, right? So there's so many good ideas you can get from just watching her. But where else can they find you? And then learn about the Authentic Brand Accelerator and the store. Yeah, anyway, so much good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I always tell people my website, we spend a lot of time making it. We all do, So it's got all of the things we need. My website, BrandMerry, BrandMerry, .com has, we're talking 10 years of blog posts on there, links to my tons of free resources, and then I have a storytelling shop. So I have a course on teaching you how to write your brand story that we talked about, sending stories in email marketing, using stories to sell on calls, on sales conversations. So there's a lot in there. And that's also where the accelerator lives. So if you're in the beginning stages of building a personal brand, it's the best program because it does start with storytelling as the foundation, ideal customer work, messaging, and then ultimately the emotional side of it. Like, what colors are you going to use? How are you going to show up? What's your tone of voice going to be? And fleshing all of that out so that you can ultimately create content really, really easily. But you can definitely connect with me over on Instagram at Michelle Knight Co. That's where I am most active. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can just DM me.
And people, I guess, if they wanted to use you for coaching, do you just do it remotely over Zoom or whatever?
Yeah. Yep. And I also offer personal branding intensive. So that's more of like a one-to-one type of relationship. I do 30 days. Is my main focus. And then if we want to keep working together, we can. It's a good trial period for everyone. I've been doing this long enough. I signed some 6-month contracts where I was like, this has been rough. Okay, so we're not going to do that. So I do offer 30-day intensives all around personal branding and building your personal brand and coming up with your content ideas and your stories. And that information is also on my website.
Okay.
So I'd say if you're like, where do I start? Go to the website. It really does have everything. I put a lot of work in it. We just relaunched it in January with the new messaging and branding and stuff. So it's fresh.
Yeah, I found it. That's how I found you. I was looking for
I
brand.
love that.
I was looking for brand coaching, and you came up, and then I went all deep dived through your website, and I was so excited when you said yes that you would come on this podcast and help us tell better stories.
I love that you found me on Google because my SEO, I've been number one on brand coach for probably like 8 years now, and SEO has changed a lot, but I'm still holding strong. So I love that you found me on Google.
Yeah. So, and for our agents listening, if today stirred something for you, if you thought, I actually do have a story worth telling, I just don't know how. So just start. Don't overthink it. Just start. You can go to brandmerry.com for resources. We'll put a bunch of stuff in the show notes at susanagibb.com. And Michelle, thank you so much for being with me today. Don't go away. I'm Susana Gibb. Thanks for listening. This is The Long Game.